Then I would like to pass it over to Judith for the land acknowledgement.
Hello, everybody. I'm Judith, talking to you from Tiohtià:ke, in other words, Montreal, Canada. I respectfully recognize and acknowledge the relationship that the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across Canada have with the land that all Canadians live on and enjoy. I recognize human rights of people who have suffered from systemic racism and discrimination in Canada. I seek to provide a welcoming, engaging, and safe community for everyone. Welcome.
Thank you, Judith. And for today's topic, I would like to pass it over to Katerina to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Hi, welcome everybody. So today we thought we would have a very informal session in which people have a chance to ask any questions that they've never had the courage to ask about RRID Core Marketplace. And then I will also toward the end give a brief introduction of the new project that Anita, Nate, and Judith and I have started at getting funded from NSF to assign persistent identifiers to individual microscopes and instruments in general. So unfortunately, Amanda French could not make it today because of a last-minute issue that came that could not be avoided. So the speakers, the people here answering that are going to answer your questions are Anita Vandrowski, who is the founder of SciCrunch, and she is at University of California, San Diego. She is the person that started the whole RRID Research Resource Identifier project, and Nate Herzog from the University of Vermont, who administers and runs the Core Marketplace website, in which that is specifically designed to assign RRID to facilities, to core facilities. So it would be nice if people are have questions, if they can please, if they are able to, turn on their video. Also feel free to ask questions in the chat. And this is a follow-up from a session we had a couple of weeks ago in September, in which there were more formal talks, but no time for questions. And so, Aditi, could you please put the video, the link to the video, so that if people missed that, they can they can go back and listen to those to that talk, to those talks, and at that video when at the link when they are when they have time. I don't know if anybody wants to start asking questions. Otherwise, I can ask an initial question. One thing that is a little confusing for me regarding the RRID Core Marketplace is the fact that sometimes we are asked to, even though, for example, I registered my core facility at the Core Marketplace, I am then asked to log in to claim ownership of the core facility, and that is very confusing for me. Can I don't know if it's Anita or Nate explain what that is about?
Maybe Nate, you go ahead.
A lot of that has to do with just different processes, I think, in the way in which our two platforms line up. And I'm not going to speak for how SciCrunch runs and why they do what they do. So I'm going to lean on Anita for that one. But I will say that our two platforms do trade information that all the public information that is available within the core marketplace can and does get traded with SciCrunch. And as far as like the requirements of the process that you just mentioned, you know, logging in and claiming ownership and why that happens, I think a lot of that has to do with the curated process that runs on the RID end of things. And I'm going to turn that over to Anita to talk a little bit more about that because that's something that I don't deal with directly.
Yeah, so the RID SciCrunch registry, so the source for RIDs, so let me make something super clear, hopefully. The RID initiative is kind of an umbrella on top of a lot of community resources. Nate has one of those community resources. The core facility heads are part of the ABRF. This is the core community that Nate brings to the table. But the data that's within the core marketplace is curated, if you will, only by the facility heads and is not aligned by a curator. In the SciCrunch registry, which forms and gives the RID to the number to each facility that wishes to apply for it, that is a database. It has a curator associated with it and curation functions associated with it. So the data is aligned to a particular standard that we are working on, so that each of the cores that we have, for example, have the name of the university as the first part of the core facility name. There are reasons why we do all of those things, but one of the reasons should be fairly obvious. There's probably an imaging facility in every single university. Sometimes there are multiple. And if you just typed in imaging facility as the name of your facility, it would not be very specific. So we do these things to improve findability, and also we have a problem. We cannot have two resources named the exact same thing. So it's not really a problem, but it is a way to kind of disentangle one imaging facility from another. Does that actually answer your question reasonably well, Katerina, or do we want to go deeper into this, or do we want to open this up for others to ask questions?
Yeah, definitely. Please jump in, anybody that wants to ask questions. But I think, so let me just try to paraphrase what is happening. So I go to Core Marketplace because, I mean, I go to Core Marketplace, I register a facility, then somehow Core Marketplace goes to you and asks for an RID.
Mm-hmm.
Then the information is sent to you, and then why is so I guess still the key point, and then that information has to be curated to make sure that it matches the metadata that you want for the RID. Okay, that's all clear. So, but basically, are you seeing who is the creator of that record from the RID side? That's the reason why I have to reclaim it, is because you don't see it. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, seeing it is really something that I can see potentially, but the issue with our system is that it requires a username to be associated with a particular record. So I cannot create the username for you without you claiming it on, verifying that the email is real and all of that. So that's the only reason why you have to actually redo this. I mean, it would be potentially, again, since we do now have some money to improve the processes that are in place. I mean, we did this integration without without any formal funding. So, the integration was a little bit loose. In all honesty, when we first started, Nate and I started sharing a spreadsheet. And that is, I wouldn't say a really great way to integrate to entirely different databases, but it is a way. The goal, of course, is to make sure that people don't have to enter the same information twice. And that is the goal. And we try to do the best we can with the money that we have to make sure that our processes run as smoothly as they can. But now that we have funding for some of these integration tasks, we will be sitting together to say, what is the annoying thing that is happening between the two systems, and how can we help to better, reduce those annoying steps.
Yeah,
That's
there's also a process involved where, okay, so I want to say that if a person says, hey, I run a core facility and I want to sign my core facility, I want to create a core facility profile in the core marketplace. That's one possible way for making a profile on the marketplace and getting an RRID and so forth. But also, there are institutions where like an entire department will say, hey, you know what, we've got like 12 cores, we want to register them all. And so they get an assistant or someone to go in and sort of like mass register all of these things. And there's sort of a disconnect between the person involved in running the core, the person you would think who would be actively involved in creating this profile. It's disconnected from the actual information that exists in our database and also on the RRID database. And so, part of what I think this process does, and Anita's right, there's probably ways to optimize it, but it's sort of a little course correction into saying it's like instead of completely disconnecting you. I mean, imagine, someone creating a profile for you on Facebook and all of a sudden it starts generating information. You're like, hey, whoa, that's not me. I didn't create this. We want to make sure that, the people who are responsible for the cores that, contain the information that exists in the core marketplace and over on SiteCrunch and in other sites as well, feels that they have the responsibility and the keys and the access to get at that information. Like they're the ones who created it. They're the ones who can get at it. And that's not always the way that this happens, but we do want to make sure that, that there is a person and they do feel empowered, that they don't feel like, something is running on their behalf and that they're disconnected from it.
Thanks, Nate. That makes a lot of sense. And we are actually seeing more and more of that particular use case, at least on our end, and we pass some of that information to you. So the other part of this is there are kind of two entry points in which we can start to make the core facility entries. There's the RID portal itself, and then there is the core marketplace portal. We share the information, so we'll pass the information to Nate. Nate passes the information to us if it comes from either system. But there is so again, we want to make sure that there is that sharing, and but the administrator issue is a big one because they often do provide us with a list of cores, might not be yours. And so on the core market, or on the, on the RID portal on the SiteCrunch registry, we have this sort of double check, which is what Nate does as well. It's, give us the institutional either email address or a paper or some, your name on a website or something which shows that you are actually part of the core so that you can be technically the owner. The administrative assistant should not be the owner of that core.
Any more questions? That would be nice to have more questions from other than me and Judith. Although I'm sure it's useful to people to listen to other people's questions.
So
Judith.
while people are thinking about their questions, so how do I get started? So I want to get an RRID. Do I go to ABRF or Core Marketplace, or where do I go?
Well, ABRF Core Marketplace, they're kind of the same thing. But yeah, ABRF won't be able to help you directly. They'll send you to the Core Marketplace. You can apply to get, to create a profile at the Core Marketplace. It's a fairly easy process. And then all new profiles created automatically get sent over for RRID assignments. So that process happens automatically and invisibly to the user. There's also a way to do it where you can go directly to the SciCrunch registry, and you can also say, hey, I've got this facility, I want to register it for an RRID. And when that happens, the process happens in reverse so that you'll get your RRID registered that way, and your core will get sent over to the Core Marketplace to get a core profile created for you. So either way, whether you start at the Core Marketplace or whether you start at SciCrunch, you're going to end up in both places. If that answers your question.
Yes, actually, it's interesting. Just a comment. So when you click to that website, coremarketplace.org, I must say it took me a few dozens of seconds to find add or edit my facilities. So it was just a bit tiny. So maybe in the long term, maybe make it bigger, because I did saw that web page and I was like, okay, this is not it. This is not it. So
Good to know. We
yeah,
can,
my
we can
first
review that.
Actually wonder.
so yes, and I just want to stress out, it's possible to have both. ROR will be for your institution, and that does not prevent you from getting a RRID for your core facility, right?
Correct.
Excellent.
Correct. Yeah, and getting an R, most institutions have an Aurora ID. And if it doesn't, if it's like a new branch within your institution, or if it's, some brand new institution that just popped up, there's a process for doing that. It's outlined on the ROAR website. But getting a ROAR ID is totally separate from getting an RRID. Those are two individual requests.
So if I may, because I run a small business, but I handle the instrument of research centers, for example, here in Montreal, and I took the habit of naming the instrument by using appending ROR, RRID, and eventually the instrument serial number. So that gives me a unique way of finding an instrument when I have a lot of instrument in my database to look for. So I think, to me, this is super useful.
Any more questions? Oh, okay. There is a question here. Can you please explain, from Chris, can you please explain more about the difference between those two IDs, RRID and RORs?
Sure. I like to, so, think of it like if you had an item in an inventory system, right? Say, I don't know, it's we'll call it a car. You have a car that was created in a warehouse, and in this warehouse is a bunch of different cars, right? Say that there's hundreds of thousands of cars. There's a couple of ways that you can identify this car, right? You can identify it by a vehicle identification number. That is one identifier, and that's going to be very specific to this exact car. Or you can identify it by, say, a model number, which is not only going to identify this car, but all of the cars that are of the same model, make and model that this car is. That's sort of the way that RRIDs and RORs separate. You can think of RRID as something that is very specific to, a core facility. Like a unique core facility gets an RRID, and it is unique to that facility. It does not apply to any other facility. Whereas an ROR is more like a model number because it is unique to the institution, but within that institution can exist multiple core facilities, right? So there can be a dozen core facilities that all have the same ROR because they're all part of the same institution, right? But they were all going to have individual RRIDs, which are going to be unique to every one of those individual core facilities within that institution. Does that make sense?
Hi, Nate. Yeah, thanks very much. So I'm also wondering about the sort of the more international. I'm based in Mexico, by the way. So
Okay.
so I'm wondering about the international sort of take of this because I mean we signed up for an RRID some time ago, but I seem to remember parts of the process seemed a little bit strange to match to this kind of identifiers and or sort of the things that we have outside of the US. So how international has this program been?
Well,
And
we do have facilities that are within the core marketplace that have RRIDs. They're all over the world. But I think I understand where you're coming from. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not every institution like what can we organize their facilities the same way? Is that correct? So that
well,
oftentimes you'll
I'm kind of
have
thinking. So, say if I want an RRID, but my institution doesn't have an RRR. I mean, many won't,
right,
because it's small or whatever. They don't even know about it. So,
right.
I think that the ROR should be there for your institution. There's about 100,000 some odd RORs now. They are trying to be uh, as comprehensive as possible throughout the entire world.
okay.
I mean, you don't absolutely need a ROR for your institution to have an RID. That's
Okay.
not that there's no like tight linking there. But I do know that ROR has scraped all of the literature in order to try and find all of the unique entities that are it's some kind of an institution. So if you're in an institution in Mexico, you should have a ROR.
Yeah, no, I think we do, and I did manage in my case because I'm part of a massive institution. I mean, it's a federal university, so
Mhm.
it certainly does. But there are a number of really quite smaller, sort of research institutes, whatever. So I'm just thinking, I'm putting on a hat. I also participate in the Latin America Bioimaging Network, so I'm thinking about a lot of the smaller facilities that we represent there, and that may not have that level of sort of institutional sort of awareness.
Mhm.
But anyway, I'll look into it. It's actually um, I'll have a look down the list of the raw facilities, see if I can catch it out or find one that isn't there, but whatever. It sounds so the raw is actually like a scraping thing. So it's kind
Um,
of
yeah, I mean, they have they have a curator, and the
okay.
curator's goal is to ensure that the ROR listing. So ROR was also built on something called Grid. And now it is being taken care of by a slew of institutions, primarily led out of the California Digital Library, but it works very closely with DataCite and with Crossref. So
Okay.
there was a funders list in Crossref that has just been incorporated as well, and a lot of the institutions actually have small buckets of funding for their faculty. So the ROR is what you can think of. And there's also a difference in what does a ROR do. ROR's goal is to be the drop-down list for institutions in all journals, right? So for your affiliation, ROR wants to just, if you're starting to type in your affiliation, they want that name to be the same. And then the way they do that is they have a ROR ID for the institution with all of the associated identifiers like grid, ISNI, and there's like a bunch of others that they have mapped and cross-mapped into themselves. Again, they're great. They're great, but their goal is to mark the institution. Our goal is to mark how many cores, and we want to make sure that we associate that with the right institution.
Sure, excellent. Okay. Well,
Right.
thanks.
I mean,
yeah, I need to look into that again. Sorry.
I mean, no, Chris, I just want to say that you do raise an interesting point in that as we see more interest from facilities and institutions outside of the United States, I get the creeping suspicion that maybe there's an assumption being made for like how research facilities are organized. Like here in the States, it's a very common model of research facilities typically are created within academic institutions. And so, that's sort of the structure. We do have, private facilities certainly, but the bulk of research that happens within this country is done in facilities within academic institutions. And I'm not guessing, I'm wondering if that may not be the case in different countries throughout the world. I don't have a lot of data to back that up, but I do see like, various organizations that don't necessarily look a lot like academic institutions. They look like something else, but they also have like core facilities within them. They don't match up exactly to the same model that we have here in the United States, which is what I'm saying. So for anyone who is listening right now, who has more information that you could give as to, differences in how your core facilities are organized and how they're funded and, that kind of flow of, how you fall under different institutions. I think we would all be very interested in learning more about that.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually, so for instance, without wishing to dominate the discussion, for instance, I'm head of a national laboratory that is distributed across 3 sites, each of which is in a different institution. So it's kind of like 3 sub-sites of the same national laboratory, but each one will be in an institution that has a different ROR, for example. So yeah, there can be some interesting, should we say, organic organization of the sort of the facilities based around different designations. So the national laboratory designation in Mexico comes from the government, but the responsible institutions are the host institutions for those national laboratories, and they link themselves together how they choose, and that can actually change over time as well. So so they can grow, or they can one could drop out or whatever. So yeah, there are I can see that some of those designations would be a bit would need to be looked at anyway. But that certainly happens in Mexico. So
Yep.
If I can jump in here a second, I would like to, Chris, I see your question, so just hang on a second. I wanted to, just comment on this specific topic, which, by the way, Chris, thank you for bringing it up, because I've heard these questions and these issues before. This is part of the reason we are having this meeting here, so that, questions can be asked and Nate and Anita can receive back feedback on situations that have been challenging for people. So so I really am grateful for your question. I have posted 2 links there on the chat that are, there could be a starting point for clarifying some of the gray areas between RORs and RRIDs. It's a cross post that was made by Anita and Amanda on both the RRID and the ROR sites. that tells you a little bit about the thinking behind what should be and what kind of entity should be assigned an ROR, what an RID, and what are the type of gray areas in which is not that clear, and maybe one can get both. It's a starting point for thinking about it, so that one can address some of the questions. But I think I want to stress the fact that RRID and Core Marketplace are aiming, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nate and Anita, to be a resource for a global resource. So if there is a problem that is to match with existing realities outside the US, that doesn't mean that they don't want to address it. I mean, obviously there is definitely a question of funding, but it is definitely something to be made available, to be reported, and so that people know, and BINA could help with this communication, especially now that we have some funding for increasing the connections and working on some of these topics. So any questions that you can, so I really want to stress the point that Nate made. Please let us know what if you encounter issues. Okay, Chris has a question. Do you want to ask it, or you want me to read it? Maybe, okay.
I'll ask it. Yeah, so I recently made a facility profile for my microscopy core at University of Connecticut on the core marketplace and got assigned an RRID. And I also got an email from SciCrunch. I'm just wondering, is there anything in particular like I need to go and do in SciCrunch, or is, I received the RRID and I have my core marketplace facility profile, am I good?
If you would like to do things in SciCrunch, you may. The main thing is for you is informational. So you should have gotten a fairly lengthy email that says, if you would like to do certain things, here's how you would go about it, including claiming ownership of that page and what have you. You don't have to. That's absolutely not necessary. But hopefully the thing that, both Nate and I very much agree on is, here is how you cite your core, and here are a couple of, kind of shorthand things that we know work pretty well in terms of improving your rate of citation from your users. So we have surveyed cores that were being successful. We looked at what they were doing. The two easiest things that you can do with your RRID is, one, you can put it on your website in a place that's really easy to find. It could be in the front page. It could be in a place that says, acknowledgement requested or some such. Put it right there at the top. Make it really easy for them. Don't have a bunch of text. Just put that in. Request acknowledgement. Put this sentence into the acknowledgement. We thank your core RRID, whatever it is, for help with whatever.
Yep.
And if you put that and give that sentence, be very, very, proactive about that and and consistent, then you'll start to see the same exact sentence over and over and over again in all of the papers that are actually acknowledging you, which is very nice. The other place that the RID seems to be like fair, again, easy thing to do, that's fairly effective, is if you have a couple of email addresses that interact with the user community on your end, put the RID request for acknowledgement in the signature line of those email addresses. So that could be your email address. You could have one from the core, and but that way, that kind of gets into people's minds. Like every time they get an email from you, or your core central email address says, oh, I should be acknowledging the core. Because one of the things Nate and I found, and I'm sure many of you have found the same thing, although I invite the question, is that often authors say, oh, I paid money for the core, why would I have to acknowledge it? and they don't quite realize that the amount of money that they're paying isn't the full thing. And, of course, have grants, and we also have to show that, we're doing very nice things for the world. And so this is kind of the way to just put that into the user's mind, like, hey, you should always acknowledge your course in your papers. And they often, I mean, it's not a hard thing that you're asking them to do. So if you just make it really easy and kind of put it into their minds that they have to, or that you really would love for them to do that, then I think it's a pretty easy way to do so.
Okay, no, those are good suggestions. Thank you.
Any more questions? Please don't be shy. Especially people that might have found issues and with like things such as Chris was mentioning, it would be great to hear your experience and comments and questions. Everybody's very shy. I'm gonna ask another question that so I'm actually gonna ask a question to the audience, whether anybody has tried to associate an instrument and I obtain an RRID for an instrument for a facility at a facility. If anybody has tried to do that, and if people have questions about that. Because we've been talking primarily of core facilities and institutions.
Maybe
Yes.
you can use the yes and no button to tell us
Yeah.
the answer.
If you wanna just respond, you could use the yes and no button under React. You don't have to necessarily. So if you've had experience trying to assign an RID to an instrument, that would, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, so actually I had a question about, well, I'd sent an email to SciCrunch about an EM instrument, which unfortunately is 25 years old, and didn't have an official page on the manufacturer's website. Now I understand this is probably a more rare circumstance at this point.
No.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very common circumstance.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm just curious what thoughts we have for being able to link those, or at least to reference them. I mean, I was told by the person at SciCrunch that I should simply list it on our facilities website, but that we wouldn't be able to have an RRID for it.
Do you have any kind of documentation for the instrument? So one of the things that she's looking for is any kind of documentation in terms of a spec sheet. She's looking for any of these sorts of things. If there's
we have like an SOP about how, operating that particular instrument.
Is that
Yeah,
a website that's accessible to the internet, or is that an internal document?
We can make it publicly accessible. Yeah, we share our microscope SOPs through a Google Drive, public Google Drive.
Okay. It would be ideal to put some of those on at least a protocols.io. It should be free to do that.
Okay.
But that gives you a DOI listing for that.
Okay.
But basically, if she's looking at it and she says, oh, there's only an internal document here, there's nothing for me to verify that this is an instrument, then I would not take it.
Understood.
If there is a public facing site of some variety and that has any kind of documentation about the resource itself, then she can assign an RID for it if that is desired. A lot of people use, money from various funders to purchase these instruments. If this is a one-of-a-kind now instrument because you've tweaked it so much away from the original, which it sounds like for 25 years, you've probably got a really, really unique instrument. It would have to have some kind of public documentation in order to get an RID.
So
Okay.
I will jump in here because the funding we just got from NSF, and also Josh is actually here on the call, that is part of this, Judith and Nate and Anita, is about trying to solve that issue. So one thing that I should say is that the RRID that you can get for an instrument at the moment, even if you can get it, is an instrument, it's a model. So it's basically what Nate was talking about, is like the model of a car, not the vehicle identification number of an individual instrument.
Right.
So so if so what Anita was talking about is about the general model, whatever that instrument was that was purchased, if but it wouldn't be an identification of your individual instrument that you have at your facility. So that is what we are trying, this grant that we just got in August is meant to do, is to actually create an infrastructure that works with Core Marketplace and SciCrunch to be able to assign identifiers to instruments that can be associated to the core facility. Then there can be an NRID for the instrument model. And then there will be, the idea is to have a persistent identifier, persistent instrument identifier for the specific instrument. And then for light microscopy, we're going to give the opportunity to associate descriptors of those instruments in a standardized manner. But we're also very much interested in working with other communities to do the same for example, electron microscopy would be one of the obvious extension that we will look for. So if you have a descriptor.
So Katerina, what should we tell people now to do with electron microscopes or other kinds of microscopes that we don't currently cover in the funding? Should we have them pull a DOI for that particular instrument? Should we give them RIDs? I mean, this is a sort of a gray area within our funding. We don't currently cover electron microscopes. So
right. Yeah, so I think it's if there is a descriptor of an instrument, like the model when it was purchased, that can be allowed to create an RRID for the model of the instrument, like a generic RRID, that is definitely something we should continue try to do, so that we can fill in the model database. But then yeah, we don't have an infrastructure at the moment for people to register an individual instrument. So even if we would say to people, okay, if you can register the persistent identifier for that particular electron microscope without getting the full description. We don't have that yet. So we're building it. We're hopefully by the end of this year, not this year, but this academic year, we will have something so that people can start testing it. So this is something that we have to, we're going to have the first steering committee meeting of the grant next week. But one thing that we may want to start thinking about it is answering exactly those questions, because one idea would be to allow people to register the persistent identifier for the instrument instance, even though it's not a microscope, it's not a light microscope. They're not going to get the full description, but at least they can get a persistent identifier for the instrument. But this is something we have to decide, because yes, I agree, it's a gray area at the moment.
It's very much a gray area. And so, my goal is, well, let's get at least the model.
Exactly, absolutely. No, I
Okay.
just want to explain the
Yeah.
the difference so that people are aware, because I've seen people thinking that the RRID is an RRID is for instrument is basically for the specific instrument instance, and it's not
Right.
so.
And it is not.
And it's not. So that I want to make it clear for people, because this has been a confusing area.
Yep. And just like with ROAR, we need to have some really clear documentation to specify where the RID starts and stops and where other identifiers start and stop. And it's yeah, we're all trying to figure it out. But we do have some clear guidance.
We sorry, anybody wants to talk?
I just wanted to say thank you for your introduction.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, so I just on the guidance part, I just want to let people know that there was a workshop also supported by NSF, in which hopefully there will that is for fair instruments and fair facilities and instruments, that took place recently in Colorado as part of a series of 3 workshops, and the aim is to generate some guidance for all of these aspects, so that so that basically we can give very clear guidance to people what they should do, and what are the options for actually getting it done, because there is a lot of confusion. So yeah. Any other questions? I guess not very. I'm maybe the only one. Well, some other people try to obtain a persistent, sorry, an RID for an instrument, but nobody else. Not very many people. But I mean, the RRID for the facility is extremely useful, and so that is definitely the issue with the instrument should not stop people from getting the RRID for their facility. Any more questions? Did anybody encounter? Oh, go ahead.
Alex here. Just wondering, like, do you have any guidance on how much information should we include for the facility in the description?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of that.
Could you repeat your question, please?
How much information should we include in description of the facility? Like maybe list of instruments, or like expertise, or like maybe some auxiliary equipment, like for example, we have microscope with electrophysiology rig. Should we mention that? Those kind of things.
Sure. You can include as much or as little description as you want to. While it's a required field, because we need to know who you are and what you do, that information is really going out to people who are looking at your core profile and trying to figure out like what it is that you do. So, I mean, anything that you can say, we specialize in this, we've invested in this infrastructure, we do this kind of work. We primarily like to work with, these kinds of persons, or we exist to serve, the faculty within our institution. However you want to say that, it's when people come to your core profile, they want to be able to look at the description and figure out, is this the resource that I'm looking for? Is this something that can help me along with my research? So any words that you could put down to that effect, I think, are going to be useful. But there are no like keywords or key sentences within that description that qualify you for an RRID. We need something there. But exactly what you say is up to you.
Okay, any more questions?
Little
don't-
question, maybe not sure to well, the RRID, is it does it only belongs to microscopy core facility or any other type of core facility could also join? And let's say there is a cytometry core facility and a microscopy core facility in the same institute. Should it be one or two RRIDs, or I'm just not sure.
So Dominic, this is a little bit of a gray area. Some core facilities have a lot of different functions, and it's the same organizational unit, the same grant maybe that covers them. If it is different grants that cover those two cores with a different director and what have you, you might want to have two RIDs. If it's the same director, you might want to say, just use one. It depends on how you would like to track impact. If it makes more sense, and this is, there's a little bit of a lumper and splitter problem, right? If you want to track impact of an individual function of your core, we would try to dissuade you from that because it takes something to maintain the RID record itself. But if it makes sense because there's a different grant associated with that core, whether or not it's in the same building doesn't matter. You can have one or two, but we do try to dissuade people from making 20, right? Because it would, also, do you have a single email that you use to try and get citations? If you have an email that's the citation thing starts to be 20 lines long, you probably don't want that. So, I'm more of a lumper than a splitter, and it has sort of served us reasonably well. If it's pretty easy to tell whether you're using the cytometry, flow cytometry, or whether you're using the microscopy, maybe you want to just have one. But that is up to you. I would leave that in your very capable hands. But generally speaking, a core has a director. It has at least one grant associated, and it has some instruments. If you have two directors, then I would, encourage splitting those into two RIDs, two core listings. If you have one, I would probably encourage you to lump those together.
I'll also add to that it depends a lot on how you present your facility, especially in the curation process when we're trying to figure out, are you one facility? Are you multiple facilities? If you come at us and say, we are 2 or 3 facilities, but we're using the same website and it has the same address and it looks like it's the same building, then the process is going to like push back a little bit and says, this really looks like it's one facility. So if it really is like, if there are multiple facilities, maybe they're using the same space, probably the best thing you can do is maybe come up with like multiple web pages and just say, no, they really are separate. They may be using the same space, and they may have the same guy running it, perhaps, but to do everything possible that you can to split that information apart if you really do want those two cores to stand separately. That would help the curation process kind of understand the structure better.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to add a comment. So basically, if you have two different facilities at the institution, one is a microscopy facility, one is a genomics facility. There are clearly two facilities, two directors, even if they may share the same space, but they have clearly two facilities, then yes, those should be different. If it is a multifunctional facility with multiple different service offer, that probably should be, in most cases, a single facility. But anyway, the other thing that I want to be sure to clarify is that this is not just for microscopy. It is for any type of core facilities, for any function that is that can be from genomics to
Mining,
That's right.
the
any-
mining and operating boats and buoys. Yeah, so there we have, you know, we actually, there's a school of mines. I didn't know there was one, but there is, and there is a core facility that learns how to mine things. But we are nearly at the top of the hour. I just wanted to remind you, Katerina.
No, absolutely, yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Mhm.
Any other question? We have 2 more minutes.
Maybe just about the instrument part, because you talked about electron microscopy, and so let's say there is a flow cytometer. Can it be added also as RRID or?
As so we have a lot of flow cytometers already, or at least we have several of the main ones. If you have one of those, then we can just create a relationship between those two entities, your facility and that instrument. And that is how it can also be found. But if we don't have that instrument, then, you know, please try to register it using the model number. And if you have any, again, we're looking for public documentation of that instrument. It could be the website from the company or other documents that are associated.
Yeah.
Very good. I think we are now pretty much at time. Oh, there is our facility and behavior facilities. It has 2 wings, imaging wing, behavioral neuroscience wing. There is only one director for the whole IBN facility. Do you recommend separate IDs for each wing?
No, I would recommend the same. It seems like there's one director. It seems like there's one IBM facility. We'll call it your university IBM facility. And it will have multiple things. That is my recommendation.
Yeah, I agree.
And you can go against it. That's fine. But that would be what I would recommend.
It's just a facility that offers multiple services.
Yes, which is common, actually, which is very common. Thank you so much for hosting this, Katerina, and thanks so much for all the questions. I'm really glad to be here. I'm grateful, and hopefully you get all of your users to use RIDs so you can easily find out who's citing you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.